Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eden. So this run seems to be like it's going to be a fun one, and not only because of the starting items, but what I would also call an unusual stat distribution. And this is something that comes up sometimes, like there are a few challenges based on that. But what I think the biggest part is, if we have high damage but low tier delay like we have now, it makes for a much more compelling experience, because you're very fast and good at clearing rooms, because as soon as you enter it, of course, you're looking for that opportunity. You're very meticulous with your shots. You're trying to hit as many enemies as possible because of your penetrative shots, and you're just kind of trying to maximize the damage. But maybe because of that, because of your low tier delay, your fight isn't that good against bosses or single target enemies, and that makes it a bit of a more balanced stack. I still think on the average case you're much faster if you have this combo because of how good penetrative shots are. If you think about it, when you shoot like 3 enemies at once, that's essentially tripling your damage output, and that's obviously something that's very strong. But I feel like it is a weakness that we need to be aware of. We just need to know that even though maybe our run looks very strong because we're kind of dealing with these enemies very easily, if you enter a scenario like boss rush, where there are bosses which have a lot of HP, because of our low tier delay, it might end up actually being a bit too slow for us to actually get to Hush. And as we always know, this is very important to do, and this is something that I kind of tend to underestimate or overestimate in some case a lot. And I just need to be, what I'm just trying to say is that we need to be careful and we need to be aware of our weakness. So if there's maybe an item or something that's going to help us out to kind of clear with those enemies or bosses a bit more efficiently, then I feel like we need to take it, just to kind of get rid of it. And of course, just see where the run takes us. What's maybe good about this particular run is, even if you don't get a lot of strong runs, like even if you get to boss rush and don't get a lot of good items, we can still kind of rely on the D100 as our contingency plan. If we enter boss rush and see, wait a second, our DPS actually isn't that good, we can just start re-rolling, and eventually, or at least the odds are, we're gonna get a really strong run, we're gonna be able to kind of go from there. So it feels nice that there is like a plan B option, which doesn't really exist in a lot of runs. So even if you do make a mistake, or maybe a lapse of judgment, then we can rely on that to kind of save our butt in the clutch. And of course, when you kind of look at the run as a whole, there are a lot of things which I feel like are indicative that this is maybe not as strong as it seems, but also it's getting stronger as the time is getting actually progresses. And the biggest part here, of course, maybe by fighting the Bighorn, and of course in this case Gertie, you can see that even though our run is very strong, it takes quite some time to actually kill them. It's not as potent as you would maybe hope it is, but because we are so effective at killing the little enemies, we're actually going through these rooms much faster. So I made a decision here, which again maybe could bite me in the ass because of the things I've talked about in the previous dailies, but I decided to go buy Compos because I felt like it was going to be the #1 item to really relieve us of our weakness here. And I bought it. I kind of scrapped 7 cents for it. I was very lucky in that regard, and I decided to buy it. And I felt like because of our innate high damage but low tier delay, something like Compost, or just an item which is gonna generate flies or spiders, is gonna be very effective. And luckily in this particular case, I was right. It did take a little bit of luck to kind of get it going and get it working, but I still feel like it was a very executive decision on my part. Again, I was fully aware that we're losing our contingency plan. We're losing basically the possibility to get a better run by re-rolling it with a D100. But what I kind of traded it for is hopefully, or at least I traded for combos in the hopes that maybe this item would be what really kind of gets us going. And luckily, it actually worked this time. I buy compost a lot, and oftentimes it just ends up being a dead item for me. And I'm just trying really hard to make it work because I know the power that this item has. But in this particular daily, did that end up to be, I think, the right choice in the end. Not only did our spiders and flies just kind of wreck things, we also got a few battery charges at a certain point, and later on we got Polyphemus, and obviously that scales really well with your damage, and because your spiders and flies scale with your damage, that just makes them super potent. I think we had something like 30 damage, which means that every single one of our flies was dealing around 60-70 damage, something like that, and that's pretty much enough to one-shot any single enemy in the game. But as soon as you enter a boss, it's pretty much enough to kill most bosses with like 10 spiders at most. And it was extremely helpful in boss rush as well, because obviously there are a lot of bosses, there are a lot of spiders, but every time you do one clear, you get 2 charges back, which means you can double your spiders again. And that just makes you for an unstoppable force of just destruction that allows you to really kill all of the bosses pretty much instantly. Because we also had rune back, I was kind of relying on that to get an Algis rune at some point, so I wasn't really in any danger of taking any damage. Like maybe, you know, in some cases something like the bloat spawns and he just instantly starts shooting his brimstone, and that can be quite dangerous, but luckily no shenanigans like that happened on this run. So as we're kind of looking at this run now, it's looking to be really strong, and basically we don't need any other items to really make it work. The only thing we kind of need to hope now is that we're not gonna get rooms which are gonna kill our spiders. We need to maintain this critical ratio of spiders up until which point we can still duplicate them. Of course, if we enter a room where there's like an invincible enemy and all of our spiders just walk into it and just instantly die, this is how we lose our momentum. This is how we die. But luckily, the game decided to be nice in this case, and no such rooms existed. At a certain point, I was thinking maybe we need to go for a break, because we had room bag, of course, and we need maybe a way to break the game as well. Because we have this combo, of course, we're kind of relatively strong, so it just seemed natural to go for something like the blank card, or maybe even the Forget Me Now, and just try to get more points that way. But I don't think a break like that occurred. I don't even think I got a single card which would allow me to get an item on the Dark Room, and of course I'm talking about things like the Temperance cards, or the Arcade Machines, or even the Devil Judgments or Beggars, and of course those all would allow us to get an item pedestal, and because we have the room bag, we would be able to duplicate those cards with the Purple Runes, hopefully, and of course reroll those items until we got something good out of them. But they didn't appear, so I wasn't too kind of fretting about it, but the only thing I wanted to point it out here is that this run didn't really have, I would say, a lot of breaking potential. The Ivy Bag was here, and that was definitely, I think, the one item which could have saved us, because we had Child's Heart on the next floor. And Child's Heart, of course, what it does, it retracts your damage and puts it on the heart. So now, essentially, every time you use the Ivy Bag, you're not gonna take any damage anymore, because the only way for you to take damage after you pick up Isaac's heart is if someone hits the heart. So that's just another way to kind of generate an infinite amount of points. But obviously, I'm not gonna give up the Compost combo, so I just kind of stuck with it. But if I knew in advance that the Child's Heart was there, or maybe if it was in one of the item rooms, I could have definitely went with that combo. But it only appeared in the Dark Room, so at that point it was already too late. I fought Hush here, and luckily I didn't get hit, not even once. So that was also quite exciting, because that's not something that usually happens, especially not for me. Even if the run was very strong, we still have that issue of not having a lot of tier delay. And obviously our spiders are just gonna fly in at some point. They're all gonna die because Hush has so much HP and that damage scaling. So I wasn't relying on them to do the majority of the damage, but I did have another contingency plan in the form of the Algae Zone. So as soon as I felt like I was in danger, I popped it, and then Hush was a bit mean actually. He kind of went underground twice, and he was basically invincible for the entirety duration of when I was invincible, but luckily he did pop up at the end, and I was able to kill him quite effectively and kind of put a nail in that coffin as well. And besides that, there really weren't any other things of note. I did pick up Guppy still here in hopes of maybe getting a chest on the Dark Room, and of course by getting a golden chest, that means we get an item, and basically any bump item would be fine. We're obviously hoping for something like the Forget Me Now, or maybe even the blank card to allow us to break the game, but just any bump item would be fine, because that would already give us kind of more points than we're actually paying for these two items, and because our item penalty is relatively low, I think it was something like minus 300 at the end, maybe even a little bit less than that. I wasn't too fretting about the item penalty, so I was kind of picking up these items in hope that maybe they would give us more benefits. But sadly, Guppy Sale really didn't work out to our advantage here. We didn't get any golden chests, or maybe we did, but we didn't get any good items out of them. So I can't be too upset about this one, but with how the run turned out, I was really excited. I actually did manage to get to the end in a relatively fast amount of time, and with a combo that I wanted to make work ever since I saw Compost. Whenever I see Compost, I just have this tendency to pick it up and try to make it work, because it's such a fun item for me. I'm not even really sure what it is, just the ability to have a swarm of flies and spiders is super exciting, and this run actually made that possible, so kind of excited about that. So at the end, our damage penalty was relatively low, our item penalty was relatively low. The only thing we could improve on, of course, I think is exploration bonus, and just getting a bit more swag. Like, if I knew about the Ivy Bag, of course I could have broken that way, but really I feel like this run didn't have a lot of opportunity for breaking, so all in all, I think we did a really good job. We played pretty well on the Gridbot leaderboards. I was ranked 10th when I looked last, so we're kind of in that top 10 zone, which is also exciting, but mostly I feel like we're back, you know. We had a few bad dailies, but we picked this one, pulled it by the horns, and we managed to actually come out on top, and that's always a nice feeling of refreshment. So I'm kind of looking forward to the daily that's gonna be tomorrow, and hopefully we can replicate the results. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.